because I thought that I would talk about being good enough. And this is a notion that I think is really important at work. And that's what I'm going to focus on, because I'm Ninja HR, and what I do is advise employees about difficulties at work and try and make work for everyone. But I think this principle of being good enough, it applies to more situations than just that. So, and excuse me, it's Sunday morning, so I've got my cup of tea. So being good enough, there's an awful lot of perfectionism out there, and it's not something that everybody has, and it's not something that is automatically part of society, and it's not something that I have. I have never been a perfectionist. I'm too fundamentally lazy, and I want to do too many other things to be a perfectionist. So there's always been an element of what is good enough, teachers, school, bosses have always got frustrated with me because they're like, well, if you could do so. And it's like, you know what? Good enough. So my violin teacher always, you could be really good. You could do your grade 8. I'm like, I don't want to do my grade 8 violin. That's 3 hours practice every day. That's just boring. I'm quite happy as long as I get to play in the orchestra, which I loved, and I still play in an orchestra. That is good enough. But he couldn't understand that because it's like, you could be better. But I wanted to do other things. I wanted to go out partying. I wanted to study. But this notion of good enough at work is really problematic because bosses, not all bosses, but a lot of bosses set this standard, which is like, however good you are, hello Helen, you have to be better. And it's like, whoa, what is good enough? And I was a really, really, really rubbish boss when I started out. I mean, phenomenally terrible. But I was lucky because A, I was 23, and B, I had people around me who accepted that I was a good enough boss for a 23-year-old who'd never managed anyone before. And they would give me the time and space to learn how to be an even better manager. And it took me a long, long, long time to even get half decent. But I was good enough because I did my best. And you know what? That is absolutely, Franz just said, biggest fear, failing and not being good enough. You know what though? It's like at work, there was this kind of, I tried and tried for a long time. And one of my team is on here now. And I realised that actually the best way to get the best out of other people is to see the best in them and just help me or help them to be the best they could be on any given day. And that some days we can't do it. Some days we haven't had any sleep. Some days we're mums and partners and children and best friends and everything's gone pear-shaped. But when I started realising and taking on that human element and understanding that actually, that is good enough on that day. So I would say, look, just what do you have to do today? And I'll take the other stuff on. And there'll be bosses, and they might not be watching this because they don't know me, but there'll be managers who think, well, that's not good enough. It needs to be perfect every day. It needs to be wonderful. It's like, but what you do as a boss, if you see the fabulous in people, if you give people space, if you understand they're not great every single moment of every day, and you're kind and you're sympathetic, some days they can't do much. But I tell you what, on the days that they can do stuff, you don't have to hassle them, you don't have to chase them. They are fabulous and they do amazing things. I think what also people forget is that it takes time. So yesterday, so my eldest daughter is almost 16, so her GCSEs just got taken away from her, which in some ways is fabulous, but she also doesn't really know what to do with herself because she loves sport, which is just an alien concept to me, to anyone who knows me. I like walking, swimming, but yeah, competitive sport, she gets that off her dad. So, but those two things have gone and she's just not known what to do with herself. So I was looking at my accounts and thinking, I haven't matched all the, I need to match in my accountancy software every invoice and save it onto that is just faff. on a second, I've got a capable kid here who's bored. I'll get her to do it. So I said, I'll pay you through the business if you do this. Hi, Sally, and other people on here know that I've been trying to encourage her to make money and be useful, because if, that it makes her feel better. So actually what I did yesterday was I started to show her how to do it. And she found it difficult. She found it really difficult because she had to ask 1,000 questions, and she could see me getting a little bit frustrated. But then I said, look, Emily, I said, you're doing a fabulous job. I said, I have trained dozens and dozens and dozens of people. I've had 2 HR apprentices. I've had large teams. I've had loads of people. And it takes time. Nobody goes into a job and knows how to do it. Every single job I've ever had has given me a storming headache, like for the first week, because it's new and it's different. But what good employers can do is they can see that potential. They can see, okay, well, everybody has to learn. And actually, you know what? In a complex job, it takes about 2 years. 2 years to really get understanding what you're doing. But good employers and good managers realise that, and they encourage and they try and create environments where someone can flourish. They try and find the things someone does really well, and they create diverse teams. So it's really easy to recruit people like you because they do things the way you do them and it's easy. But you don't get great outcomes because you make the same mistakes. And after sort of almost 20 years of managing people, my last team, I got an opportunity to pick who I wanted. And if Helen's still here, you see, one of the reasons I recruited her is because she had black nail varnish. Because I'm like, all the people I interviewed could have done the job, but I'm like, anyone who wears black nail varnish to an interview has got a little bit about them, just a little bit of interesting, and that is good. But also, I needed someone who was the opposite of me. So I am not a detail person. I can do detail if I have to, but it's not my. But I was running payroll for the whole council and doing every piece of paperwork and making sure they're all perfect. And that's not, I'm the kind of person who will read it 20 times and still miss the spelling mistake or the daft error. But there are some people in my old team who were fabulous at that. Absolutely fabulous. And they didn't want to do my kind of thing, but I didn't need them to do what I was good at. I needed them to do the things that I wasn't good at. And actually as a team we were fabulous because I helped them be the best they could be at what they were good at, and they helped me be the best at what I could be good at. And I remember one time where they couldn't find a piece of paper, and they were like, Amy, have you got it? And I said, I haven't got it, I've looked. But they knew me well enough when I was at a meeting to go through my drawers and found it. And then they went, Amy, we found it. And I'm like, oh, thank you for looking, guys. I didn't have a go at them because they knew me well enough to know that Helen says she still loves black nails. Fabulous. They knew me well enough to know I wasn't going to be upset because what we needed to do was fix the problem, and that was find the piece of paperwork. And they were better at doing that. There were other times when they would come to me and go, look, I don't know how to do this. Can you do it? And I did it. So going back to this notion of it's good enough. What employers do, and some horrible employers do this on purpose, which is really unethical and makes me very, very angry. But they sometimes play on our feelings or people's feelings of not being good enough to get them to work harder and longer and to do more hours and more work and more stress because they can make more money out of it in the short term. In the long term, people burn out and leave. But in the short term, they can get loads out of people. And it's just, it's not okay. It's not unethical. But what's interesting about this is we kind of play into it. So we don't ask the question. So when something goes wrong, we blame ourselves. Oh, what did I do? It's my fault. We don't ask the question, what is a good enough employer? What is a good enough boss? Are they good enough for you? Are they good enough to take your time and your energy and your ideas and your creativity? Because if they're treating you with, and again, it's not about perfection. There's no such thing as a perfect boss, as Helen, I'm sure, could list my failures. But there is a good enough boss and a good enough employer. And I think sometimes we put up with employers who aren't good enough and bosses who, I'm going to do another live, I think, later on, never okays, behaviours that are never okay at work, ever. No excuses, no bollocks, they are never okay. But what is good enough? And good enough boss is understanding and considerate. A good enough boss is also works out where some people are in the wrong jobs. So I don't think an employee is ever not good enough for a job. I do think sometimes people are in the wrong jobs. So, for example, I would be the world's worst proofreader. I'd miss every spelling mistake, every error, I just wouldn't, I'd get sacked within a week. It's not my skill set. But that doesn't mean I'm rubbish. It doesn't mean I'm terrible. It just means I would be in the wrong job. And I think that's so true of so many, if we as employers, but also as individuals, can try and find where people flourish. Instead of saying, I'm going to try and force you to be better at the things you're rubbish at to do this job, why don't we change the job so that well, you're fabulous at coding, but not a very good manager. Well, let's give you all the coding then and stop trying to force you to be a manager. So I think employers need to get more understanding about how to provide opportunities for people to flourish. And as individuals, as employees, we need to be kinder to ourselves and realise that it's always impossible to be a perfect employee and a perfect partner and a perfect son and daughter and mother and best friend and all at the same time when everything's going on. And that actually sometimes good enough is good enough. And I think there's something, COVID-19 is shit. My husband's a paramedic, the stories we're hearing, it's not nice. But something about being forced to be at home, when actually, it's really difficult and it's emotionally challenging. And I think it's reevaluating what is good enough for a day. And sometimes good enough is getting up and managing a cup of tea, and you don't poison the children and they don't kill anyone and there's no fires, and that's good enough. And there is some benefit from being good enough, and here's one of them. You can come into my life if you want, Jazzy. You're welcome. There's lots of people here. You can. She's going to run past and get breakfast behind, because I'm in the kitchen. And she's just tripped over something. You all right? Yeah, I know, you fell up. Oh, bless her. So what is good enough? And I think the other thing I want to say is I've been in a privileged position to see lots of chief execs and very senior people. And I think sometimes they have this perception of, they're fabulous and they have their game face, if they've got to speak to 300 people or they've got to, but behind the scenes, they worry that they're not good enough or they're not. And everybody, it seems to be all over the place. Helen says, hi, Jazzy.
I don't want to be in it.
You don't want to be in it? Well, God's sake.
Can you get me an apple and a banana?
She wants an apple and a banana. Look, you see, I can't even do a live without an apple and a banana. That's good breakfast. I wonder what she'd have asked for if you lot weren't here. Right, there you go.
I had it yesterday.
Right, okay, she's telling me she had apple and banana yesterday. But, so it's just a reminder that maybe we should lower the standards of ourselves and say what is good enough. Hi Anna. And that we should perhaps actually raise the standard of our expectations of our bosses and our organisations. As customers as well as employees, how are your friends and family being treated by their organisations? Are they, right now, sacked them and just being horrible? Are they saying, look, good enough is we've got a crisis, can you fix that today? But then the rest of the week, look, we understand you've got kids at home or you're struggling or you're ill or you're worried. I also think, again, this theme of good enough is when people have had mental health issues, which I certainly have, you kind of redefine what is good enough. And when you've been at the depths of real mental health, be it depression or, for me, because I'm bipolar, I go the other way as well. When you're at the extremes, you realise good enough is sometimes just literally not burning the house down that day or not killing anyone, and or just sometimes eating something. And I think there's a lot of people out there who have never or may never have experienced those depths, and so it's hard. It's hard, the emotional and psychological impact of being cut off from people and being at home and being scared, and it's hard. And so they haven't ever had to deal with, well, good enough under these circumstances isn't learning Russian in 3 weeks and finishing that book that you've never started. I mean, if you do those things, fabulous. But good enough is, setting today's goals and kind of going, okay, have I eaten breakfast? Did I eat something healthy as well as a Belgian bun and chocolate? Did I get some sunshine? And what I really, 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 really hope is that when all of this is over and most people go back to work, we go back with a better sense of sympathy and understanding and what we can do to allow people to flourish. That employers are a bit kinder when they realise that someone may have had a really bad day and that's why they've not done something. Not because they're useless, not because they're not trying, just because they had a bad day. And have a bit more sympathy and actually say to them, it's okay to have a mental health day. So many people will not tell their boss that the reason they're off sick is because their mental health isn't great. They've suddenly got a backache or a headache or... and of course, we all have those, and that's fine if that is actually the case. Helen's moaning that I should drink my tea because it'll go cold. She used to get... she says, not that you ever minded. They were horrified with me because I drink cold tea. I told you, I'm not a perfectionist. And look, Helen, this is actually the one I used to drink at work, the cup I used to have at work. That's just jazzy. But, I forgot what I was going to say now. It's a good job I'm talking about not being perfect, isn't it? Because otherwise this is a very imperfect life. But I think that's the point, and I'm not going to talk too much about social media. But so, it's not about perfection. It's just about turning up, being the good enough, saying hello to people, sharing who you are and connecting. And I hope that the world is a bit kinder, a bit more sympathetic. And at work, I think we can achieve more and more interesting things and more creative things where we understand what is good enough and try and find jobs and create jobs that allow people to flourish. So I think that's probably what me done for today. I hope you're having a good Sunday. If you know, I had to practice what I preach. So I am in my pyjamas. I haven't brushed my hair. I haven't even cleaned my teeth. No makeup, but this is good enough. And today, this is the only piece of work I'm going to do. I'm going to watch TV, read a book, mess about with the kids, because that's good enough. So I hope you've enjoyed it. This is my 3rd live. Next time I'm going to do not okays at work. Bye. And I do know where the finish button is now.